Welcome to Mindful Drawing. I'm Robert, and I'll be your guide on this meditation practice that enters a space of mindfulness through the act of drawing. This week, we'll let ourselves sit and watch the start of a light rain, the pitter-patter on a puddle, the stillness disturb, but in a rhythmic, gentle pattern. Let that field of lines intersecting slowly grow and expand until we can find something new in them, emergent patterns from the interference, forms and ideas from the confluence of shapes, the accumulation of time, the overlap and intersection becoming a medium for designing, for thinking, for expressing something new out there on the page. But first, that open, empty, still puddle of water, allowing the drops to meet it and ripple their way outwards, forming figure. And hopefully in this we can find a little bit of relaxation, let ourselves sink into just that act of making the marks, the ripples, the circles, and filling in some of the spaces between them with a little tone to let it take shape on the page. And in that relaxation, open our mind to a little creativity. I'm going to use a mix of pen, pencil, marker today, so anything you have handy will work just fine. Go ahead and gather supplies, establish your space, and let's draw together. About on that time to get started, go ahead and gather a sketchbook or piece of paper, pad, anything in front of you. Having a little piece for the warm-up, whether that's just a page in the sketchbook, the back side of a paper, whatever. I'm going to get familiar with the technique and setup and how we'll draw. And then what we'll go ahead and do is give ourselves some time to imagine a little bit of the setting, the still surface of the page, like a still surface of a puddle or pool of water or a light stream, something just being there, the surface, fluid and malleable, but also calm, receptive. And what will gradually build out on the page is that interface with the puddle or the open stillness with a light sprinkle, beginning of a drizzle of water droplets. And so we can start there with just the thought of the ripples or the rings outward from a center with a little series of concentric circle-ish shapes. Feel free to play with how circular they are. They can be as exact or precise as your hand and eye allow, or they can get a little wobbly depending on your speed, the way your hand works with the pen, whatever it may be. As we warm up, thinking to that physical interaction of a drop in a puddle expanding outward at a consistent rate of slow diminishing, generally round, only influenced by other physics at play on the paper or on the puddle that we imagine. So they may gradually expand, they may stay tight. We don't know where we are and how much time we see, so each one is just a moment in time there. Unlike the reality of interference between each drop, the paper records one action at a time, clockwise or counterclockwise, big or small, dense or open, are all things we can play with in the drawing, or things that just come from letting ourselves open and be still in the mind, like the beginning of the page, as the ripples slowly activate and dissipate in our attention to mindfulness. As we work on the larger sheet, things might start to happen like this, where the interference, overlap, and connection come between them, and that's something you can decide as you work how much of that takes place, but it gives us opportunity as we move along to maybe draw in the space between and find something new in the patterns of overlap and disturbance to this nice open still surface. Before we engage, take a moment with the beginning condition. Let the hands rest a little bit on the paper, just noticing its texture, noticing your position to the page, making any small adjustments if you need them to feel comfortable, be stable, have a good sense of your engagement there so that doesn't take over our attention, becomes just a part of our merging with the moment here. And as you feel ready, eyes loose, soft, not needing too hard or precise of focus, finding a place somewhere, anywhere for that first drop to make contact with a light circle and begin its journey of energy rippling out on the waves. Each little bump, wiggle, variation in that ideal shape, the vacuum shape of the circle, a potential subtle variation in the density of the water, or a light breeze, or vibration that moved it a little before. And when you feel ready, we'll change positions many times, so whenever it strikes you the circle gets too big, or the neighbors get too close, you can just pick up and begin the new one. As we work through the first few, establishing composition, relationship, and getting very comfortable with the technique, start to give your attention to how you engage the paper. Clockwise, counterclockwise. Do you start in the same place each time? Or jump around, draw at somewhat random intervals? Any are okay. Just noticing how we might begin could be dependent on different locations of the body and hand to the paper, feeling more comfortable. Could just be the cycle of the breath that you enter to the act of drawing. And with a sense of how you start, how you move and engage, proceed in that forming on the shape there. We'll start to look deeper in to each ring, each expression of marking out territory on the page, each ripple in the waves of energy, aligning with the ups and downs, the ins and outs of our breath, aligning with the waves, oscillations in our place here. So when you're ready to start a new ripple, take a grounding breath. Let everything catch up to where you are. And on your next inhalation, sip in just a little more air to really prepare. And exhale on that first mark of the ripple. The small circle may happen quickly, the breath trailing off after. Let it fully extend from the body as you prepare for the next ripple with that, again, slightly more than normal inhalation, a little sip at the top. And an exhalation around the next ring. The first few we'll keep on a pace, doing together, slowing the gaps between them. Really bring our attention to that breathing in and filling out. And then that emptying of the breath and expressing through the mark. The only thing present and guiding is that time between marks to engage your eyes with the page. The time of preparing an inhalation and the emptiness of exhaling and moving together. Then you can begin to take that same cycling on at your own pace, breathing in to locate and begin, breathing out to make the mark. The cycle may speed up a little bit or keep it nice and slow between each ring, entirely up to you. Just being there present with each component of the action, moving the pen to place of engagement, placing it on the paper and starting a path in a direction, completion of that path back around, aligning with the beginning, and starting it again on the cycle of the next inhalation and exhalation. You start to play with the size and variation of the ripples, a few small, a few large. The rhythm of the light rain, pattering at different tempos throughout that field, faster than our eye can catch, but slow enough that we can see. Each of our engagements, just a moment, could have come before, could have come after. Each engagement, potential influence from its neighbors, but also on its own unique path, dissipation and deformation of that empty surface. With that slow, deliberate inhalation before mark, and exhalation to action and completion. We take in a lot of air, bring in a lot of air, a little heavier than we're used to, consistent than when we're not paying attention to the breath. So we begin to notice that intensification of oxygen, the drying of the nose, more volume moving past the membranes, When that sensation begins to creep in, we've filled up our tanks, the oxygen in the blood, helping fuel our mind, our hand, our fingers to keep everything engaged. And now we can let that attention to the breath relax a little bit. Maybe at first it's just a relaxing to in on a stroke, out on a stroke, a little increasing of the tempo, regulating of that inhalation and exhalation, letting it align to the different sizes and positions of the rings, but start still from place of presence. And just like the ripples in the water, to slowly dissipate its energy, return to an equilibrium, a stillness of the cycle that most of the time happens without us there to guide it, but exists in a window that we can observe, a window that we can manipulate through an interface to the body and to the mind through the breath. Only for a short time, shaping how we engage internally and externally. As that breath recedes, sinks back into the autonomic, draw a few more circles, just letting it become the rhythm of being here, filling out a few more of the places that emerge between and around the shapes. And preparing to move to a reading phase, the phase of present generation, creating potential. And now in that larger figure, larger space of overlap and intersection, letting ourselves explore that. Maybe with all the crossing lines, it's like a large checker mat or chessboard. Maybe some rings stand out, others recede back. Whatever your eyes begin to see, if you take a few moments to look at it, and choosing with the pen, with a new pencil, with anything else, start to find a place to begin the engagement. My eye drawn to these interesting overlaps at the edge. Sometimes full shapes, often cut in parts by the many, and highlighting a few of them with an outline or with shade to the interior, whatever you feel comfortable with working with, and whatever the instrument supports. An entry into that frozen time of the rippling drizzle of rain into a puddle. A special moments where two things approach each other, share energy, and then dissipate past. It was something identified as this first change of context, emphasis in a new way, a more graphic overlay to the image. Starts a reprocessing. Let your mind open and look for shapes, look for connections, and maybe that alternating checkerboard condition, long paths, whatever you find, and just draw here into the space for a while to make the transformation to the zones of ripples into something new. As you draw, as you search, explore, maybe sort and organize, there's something revealed about the mind, your mind, and its interaction with things like the visual field here, the complexities, the moments of opportunity or anomaly that take place within it. We can observe a little of ourself, our way of seeing pattern and graphic. I'm surprised in the number of shapes that I find in the same way as the eye gets used to seeing something and begins to look deeper or farther. At some point, they all begin to morph and mutate. The rules start clear. They begin to transform, suggest other ways of entering, of continuing the action. Begin following those paths. What interests the eye, what interests the mind, and continuing to see into the pattern space. Most of it an anomaly, just like the raindrops generated chemically in the atmosphere, falling through wind and turbulence, gravity, colliding, breaking, branching, reassembling, and eventually coming to rest with that light patter to the soft puddle, making their rings each an instant, expanding outward. All physics, all physical, but too complex to predict or know. So we just let our eye sort through the interactions, follow what it sees, and begin expanding the imagination outwards into new territories. Letting the clouds become shapes. Letting constellations emerge. Connecting our inner mind with the outer world. We have several minutes left, the time to meditate on that presence you've brought, to look inward to your time of action and expression, to notice the way you engage with the paper, fast or slow, ordered or jumpy. It's just a part of the way your mind and eyes behave and see. Breathe into it with each new mark. Follow new paths. For a minute or two to zoom real far in, to be real close and present with that pencil or pen, to notice how it moves as an extension of your hand, how it can move along curves and edges. Its speed and abstraction as it sits a little beyond the reach of your direct control, the fingertips, maybe even a little remembering way back the first times of picking up an instrument of marking, how much it's become integrated into your body mind, whether through drawing, through writing. The smooth interface that allows us to bring out in different ways something from inside to a version in the medium that holds the graphite or absorbs the ink, slowly becoming from that first holding of a burnt stick or crayon, learning again each time the ways in which we can produce something in the world, convey something from inside ourselves, begin to be the mindful participant in our creative expression, to trust and watch and guide and listen. We have about a minute left, perhaps following the last few paths or identifying and starting a new one for future exploration, bringing yourself to a place of exiting, of pulling from the zooming into the space to a zooming out of presence, of checking in with your feet, checking in with your sit bones, checking in with your back, quickly scanning as the hand may still work on its own, checking with the shoulders and the neck, which is, depending on your position, perhaps been quite static for a while. Checking in with the elbow and the wrist as we get closer to the instrument. Those check-ins help to bring it all to a close, checking in with the fingers. And as you're ready, giving them a little stretch as the furthest reach of our expression. Maybe a little stretch of the wrist to leak back up the chain, a ripple to the elbows, a little movement, a little roll of the shoulders with a couple of final closing breaths. Let everything come to a rest and prepare to go on for the rest of your day. Thank you for joining. Thank you for staying with the exercise, following the paths that open along your way, starting with the good guidance and instruction, and then opening up to whatever you see and whatever you feel and experience through that act of drawing on the page. Being receptive to yourself, being receptive to your own imagination, being open to see what comes out through you onto the paper, to find a little expression, and in that expression, some stillness back to the beginning. If you enjoyed the exercise, please let me know in the comments what you found. Share with your friends and give it a thumbs up below to let me know you like this kind of thing. I'm always happy to hear ideas for other ways we could explore mindfulness through the act of drawing, or just topics that could be fun to try to uncover there with the paper. Feel free to subscribe here on YouTube for weekly episodes. Usually every Wednesday morning, something new comes out with a little twist on how we engage with drawing. Something simple, not too much skill involved, just a place to start and engage with that instrument of marking the page. I hope you have a wonderful week and draw well. Thank you.